Welcome to Mr. Horror. Get ready to be spooked with 3 true scary Ouija board horror stories. These spine-chilling tales will keep you on the edge of your seat and make you think twice before using a Ouija board again. Let's dive into the darkness together. As a group of friends gathered for a sleepover, they decided to play with an old Ouija board that one of them had found in their attic. They lit candles and placed their fingers on the planchette, asking it questions. At first, nothing happened. But soon, the planchette began to move on its own, spelling out messages that seemed to come from a malevolent presence. The friends tried to end the game, but the planchette refused to move. They became increasingly terrified as the board began to answer their questions with disturbing accuracy, revealing personal details that only they knew. Suddenly, one of the girls began to convulse and speak in a strange language, as if possessed. They ended the game, but the friends knew that they had invited something evil into their lives. A group of college students tried their luck with an old Ouija board they found in a thrift store. They didn't believe in the paranormal and thought it would be a fun way to pass the time. But as soon as they started playing, they felt an eerie presence in the room. The planchette spelled out messages that seemed to come from a woman who had died tragically. As they continued to play, strange things began to happen in their dorm room. Doors would open and close on their own, and they would hear footsteps when no one was around. One night, they woke up to find a ghostly figure standing at the foot of their bed, holding a message that they had spelled out on the Ouija board. Terrified, they burned the board and never spoke of the experience again. A group of teenagers decided to play with an Ouija board in an abandoned house. They didn't take it seriously, laughing and making jokes as they asked the board questions. But as they played, they began to feel a sinister presence in the room. The planchette began to move on its own, spelling out messages in a language they didn't understand. Suddenly, one of the teens screamed as she saw a shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room. The board spelled out the name of a demon, and they knew they had made a grave mistake. The room grew colder, and the board spelled out a warning: "You have summoned me, and now you must pay." They ran from the house, but the demon had already latched onto them. Strange things began to happen in their homes, and they could feel the demon's presence everywhere they went. The teenagers tried to destroy the board, but it seemed indestructible. They sought help from a priest who performed an exorcism to banish the demon. They never played with an Ouija board again, knowing that the game could lead them down a path of darkness and despair. It was just a normal Saturday night, and a group of friends had gathered in Sarah's basement to hang out and have some fun. They were looking for something exciting to do, so Sarah suggested they try out her new Ouija board. Everyone agreed, and they gathered around the board, placing their fingers on the planchette. At first, nothing happened. They asked some simple questions, and the planchette didn't move. But then, it suddenly started to spell out words on its own. The group was shocked and scared, but they couldn't stop. The board seemed to be communicating with them, and they wanted to know more. As the night went on, the messages became more ominous. The board claimed to be a spirit that had been trapped in the basement for years, and it demanded that the group invite more people to join them. The group was hesitant, but they ultimately decided to invite a few more friends over to see what would happen. The next week, the group gathered once again in Sarah's basement, this time with a few more friends in tow. They were excited and nervous to see what would happen with the Ouija board. As soon as they started using the board, the messages became more intense. The spirit claimed to have taken over one of the group members, and it demanded that they continue to play the game. The group was frightened, but they couldn't stop. They felt like they were in a trance, and they had to keep playing. As the night went on, the group members started to act strangely. They were speaking in different voices and making strange movements. It was like they were possessed by something evil. The group tried to stop playing, but the board wouldn't let them. They were trapped in a nightmare. The next day, the group members were exhausted and terrified. They knew they had to get rid of the Ouija board and never play with it again. They threw it away and tried to move on with their lives. But it wasn't over yet. Strange things started happening to the group members. They would hear voices in their heads, see shadows moving in the corners of their eyes, and feel like they were being watched. They knew that the spirit from the Ouija board was still with them, haunting them. They went to a psychic medium for help, and she told them that the only way to escape the spirit's grasp was to confront it and demand that it leave them alone. The group gathered once again, this time with the psychic medium, and they used the Ouija board to communicate with the spirit. It was a terrifying experience, but they were able to convince the spirit to leave them alone. They felt a sense of relief, but they knew they would never forget the horror they had experienced. The Ouija board had opened a door to something dark and dangerous, and they had paid the price for their curiosity. It was supposed to be a harmless game, a way to connect with the spirits of the dead. But we didn't realize just how dangerous playing with a Ouija board could be. My friends and I had gathered together on a stormy night, huddled around the board with trembling fingers. We asked the typical questions: is anyone there? Can you hear us? But soon enough, the planchette began to move on its own. At first, it was just gibberish, letters and numbers that made no sense. But then the messages became more sinister. The spirit claimed to be a young girl who had been murdered in the very room we were in. It gave us specific details about the crime, details that none of us had ever heard before. As the night wore on, the messages became more and more threatening. The spirit began to demand that we perform a ritual to release it from the board. We were terrified, but we didn't know how to stop. The weeks that followed our Ouija board session were filled with terror. Strange things began to happen around us, things that couldn't be explained by science or reason. Objects moved on their own, shadows seemed to have a life of their own. And then one day, I woke up to find that I couldn't move. It felt like something was holding me down, crushing my chest. And then I heard a voice in my head, a voice that wasn't my own. It was the voice of the young girl we had contacted through the Ouija board. She spoke in a language that I didn't understand, but her intent was clear. She wanted to possess me. For weeks, I was trapped inside my own body, forced to watch as the spirit used me to wreak havoc on those around me. I knew I had to find a way to break free, but I had no idea how. Desperate for help, I reached out to a local priest who specialized in exorcisms. He agreed to meet with me and perform the ritual to release the spirit from my body. It was the most terrifying experience of my life. The priest chanted in a language I didn't understand, spraying me with holy water as he worked to expel the spirit from my body. For hours, I felt like I was fighting a losing battle. But then, suddenly, it was over. The spirit was gone, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. To this day, I can't explain what happened to me. All I know is that playing with a Ouija board is never worth the risk. The spirits you contact may not be the ones you were hoping for. Thanks for tuning into these chilling Ouija board horror stories. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to our channel for more spine-tingling tales. Don't forget to hit the like button and share with your friends who also love horror. And as always, stay safe and don't play with Ouija boards.